Hey, Grim and Perilous Adventuring fans, this is Daniel Fox, and today we're going to go through the print-on-demand Gamemaster screen from DriveThruRPG. And this actually comes direct with the screen. You'll note first off that it's actually encased in the drive-through portrait version here. And this is actually the world's greatest screen, which DriveThruRPG does resell, and you can actually add this to the cart whenever you're going through the process to complete your order. And you'll note that, of course, there are 8 panels, and this is the front side. This is the player side, and you'll see that you've got the obviously the witch hunter coming in with a band of penitents and doomsayers ready to storm inside the dungeon because something is clearly amiss beyond this panel. You can see there's a small but vicious dog and what looks like, is that one of the Skurzak maybe? We move on to the next panel, which is obviously the player. You know, the player is here in the middle of this fight. You can see the Skurzak laying in a pool of his own blood. There is a halfling gunner here using the end of her flintlock rifle there because it's out of shot. There's, of course, a dwarven plague doctor right here pointing back once again toward the Inquisitor or witch hunter that's coming through. An unusual image of a ogre pyromancer and a burning sword. We've got our female godsworn wielding her huge hammer. She brings it crashing down onto one of the Skaven. And an unusual image of an elven slayer and her 2 axes. She's got one here kind of in her grips and her grasp and the blood of another Skurzak on the end of her blade. We kind of move down the Godsword's hammer and it's smashing into the Skurzak's face. Obviously, they've begun to gather their numbers with their long pikes as they're coming through what looks like an unusual sewer, because you can begin to see not just necessarily the green glow of what looks like sludge or slime or whatever may be down here in the dungeon, but something glowing off the edge of this phlegmatic Skurzak's robe. Of course, he's on the back of one of those huge rat ogres ready to storm toward the adventurers. A drop torch here tells the tale, perhaps, of that the adventurers are being driven out of the dungeon. As we begin to go closer over here, you can start to see where this kind of culminates. It looks like you've got your Skurzak with the huge witch fire thrower that's ready to be lit. Obviously, kind of up on the back of a tall palanquin is the brood mother surrounded by witchstone. You can see the Skurzak are all kind of gathered all around here, prophetically almost, with their doom bells back here. There's a gray Vivimancer who's actually hiding his horns beneath of his turban. And actually, you'll see the gray Vivimancer as one of our new professions in the next book, which we'll be announcing here in January of 2018. So that is the player side, and it's a really neat image. It's pretty dynamic. It moves all the way from the players back once again toward the creatures that they're fighting below. So let's turn over to the fun side, which is the Gamemaster side. Really the point of the screen. The first panel you'll note, you can see that there are a number of things across it, ranging from combat to social to weapons, and the most commonly used tables you will look at as a Game Master. And you'll note there are damage condition tracks on the corners right here, a tracker. You may be asking yourself what that's for. Well, the cool thing about this is that we want Game Master to be able to track where foes are in this individually. And you can pick up these nice kind of clips on Amazon, and you can number them or name them, whatever you want. You can actually move kind of foes down this track like such, so you can track your enemies like this. I think it's a lot easier than using paper personally, and it's kind of a fun way too, because you can begin to actually, if you look back over here, you can actually begin to stack multiple foes upon one clip. In some cases, they're sharing the same condition, lightly wounded, for instance, in this case. Nonetheless, kind of a neat little additive thing we added onto it. And once again, this is all laid out and illustrated by Ken Duquette, who did our fantastic Arcana Divine Magic cards. So moving through this panel, first you'll see weapons and all the kind of common things you'll reference regarding that. You'll see that there are shields, armor, ammunition with costs, obviously. If someone needs to know what the price is of something, they don't have a book in front of them. We kind of outline what the templates are once again for you and how fire and flames work in cases where mildly, moderately, seriously dangerous or on fire effects come into play for the game. Which actually moves us on to our next panel, which is actions in combat. And you'll see it moves all the way through the same thing you've seen in the core book. Now you may be asking yourself, why are each of these headers colored differently? Well, the fantastic thing about this screen is kind of hard to see on my phone here, but some of these tables are actually color-coded together because they're commonly referenced with one another. For instance, fire and flames and falling damage, those are kind of ancillary types of damage that the Game Master may reference, so he or she can reference that visually. But another cool thing about this screen, which for those of you who are not colorblind, you'll learn that actually this entire thing here is colorblind friendly. None of it will show up in kind of odd grayish colors. We actually did that by design because we know we have a pretty strong, in our fan base, we know there are colorblind people. That's one of the bits of feedback we received about the book, was that they liked the fact that it wasn't done in color, but they really wanted to kind of see some color pop into our next kind of supplements. So in this case, we decided to go full color, both on the arcane cards, the divine cards, the Game Master screen, and we went colorblind friendly. So moving on, once again, you can see up here how your attack action overview, hit locations in case you decide to use the optional rules for hit locations. There's your cast magic overview, cast magic difficulty, channel powers and what happens when you do it, morale checks if you use that optional rule as well, movement subtypes. For instance, if you're on the back of a horse, you're going to move a little differently than you are if you're just simply on foot. We've got light sources by type, where they have perfect light, fleeting shadows, and total darkness, along with durations. And then we've got currency, selling scavenged goods, and haggling for goods. So moving on to the next panel, this is actually pretty useful. Here's all your conditional effects in combat: blinded, choked, defenseless, inspired, knocked out, and so forth. And all of your injury tables right there, without you having to go through that giant tome and having to reference it later. You have it all at your fingertips right here. All the details that you have in the book are here. You'll find them there. And that whole panel is actually all injuries along with the conditional effects in combat. Which brings us to our last panel, which is more of kind of like here's a miscellany of things that you will commonly reference, like what can I use fate points for, a player may ask. How can I use fortune or misfortune points in some cases for Game Masters? There's also a quick reference guide by topic and by page. So you'll notice if you go through this, for instance, the chasings, pages 377 to 379, kind of a quick, where the heck can I find mounted combat, for instance, and it's alphabetized too by topic. Coincidentally, these topics right here are derived from all the feedback we received across Strike to Stun, also on our Facebook page, and in our Kickstarter about, well, how the heck do I find about hazards and healing? Where am I going to find where foes are slain? These are the most commonly asked questions on the forums in social media about, where can I find these things? Or I have a question, for instance, about like cast manifestations or armor and shield qualities. We've kind of concatenated this to kind of address those commonly asked questions. We've also got some things, so for instance, if you're kind of creating NPCs on the fly, you want to randomly determine their alignment, their social class, and obviously the difficulty ratings based on players' order of chaos ranks and the NPC's social class. That is always commonly used in the game. That actually brings us back up here where we're looking at NPC motivations. Every NPC may have a different high-level motivation, so you can use these three tables here to quickly create an NPC with a little bit of background. We go up here, there you go, difficulty rating. As a Game Master, you should probably know those by heart, but we've included it there just so you remember. Obviously, if you need to let a player know, hey, you need to make a trivial eavesdrop test, and they're like, well, where's eavesdrop? Well, it's perception, and it's a common skill. So you have this that you can kind of go from left to right. So you have a quick reference guide for yourself in case you get confused or if you just don't know them by heart. That brings us down to kind of corruptive offenses. Obviously, corruption's a big piece of ZWEIHÄNDER, so you can find out, how an offense will give 1 to 3 corruption. Here's some examples that are actually drawn from the book. Same thing for middling offenses and major offenses. And the player may ask, or you as a GM may not remember, how do you turn corruption into order and chaos ranks? This is what happens at the end of a session. Once again, a quick reference guide with 2 bullet points, what happens. And then, kind of a final thing here, withstanding madness, stress, fear, and terror. Here's the kind of peril and corruption that inflicts upon players. And as before, on this side, you'll find the peril condition track. So for instance, if you have foes that you're tracking their peril conditions for too, you can easily just plug them in. Now, as a game master, I traditionally don't really track peril condition track unless it's for a quote named enemy. Usually I just kind of convert it into the damage condition track. But obviously, you know, you can use this however you want. Every person who plays Zweihander is going to play a little bit differently. So you may decide to track peril condition individually as well. So that brings us to the end of our video here for the Gamemaster screen. I hope you found this useful, and I hope that you know, once again, as a Game Master, this provides you with enough material to run with, at least to have at your fingertips. Nice and compact, folds up really easily. Once again, it's in the world's greatest screen that's sold by World's Greatest Screen at their home website or on DriveThruRPG if you purchase these panels. And I believe that the cost of the panels are free if you buy the screen itself. So anyhow, thanks once again for tuning in. We'll have another video here soon of our next product, and until then, happy gaming.